Whether you're playing a game like Grand Theft Auto, Age of Empires, or World of Tanks, one of the things that is present in all of these games is virtual representations of locations, cities, and towns. So, subconsciously, game developers and mappers have become the creators and planners of fantasy worlds that host a mixture of cities and places to visit. One thing you might not have noticed, but your brain did, is that you can instantly recognize what these places are modeled after and where in our physical world it might be trying to represent. Today is my first episode of urban planning in video games that aren't necessarily about urban planning, and today's game is World of Tanks. Wargaming has also been nice enough to sponsor this video, but you'll be hearing more about that in a sec. Yeah, you heard that right. This episode is sponsored by World of Tanks, which I actually find pretty cool because I've been playing this game on and off since like 2011, and it definitely has a small place in my heart. It's been pretty neat seeing this game progress with its graphics, maps, and tech trees throughout the years. It now has about 600 tanks and a little over 40 maps in it. And I'll be talking a lot about those maps today, because some of the locations featured in the game are downright beautiful and a far cry from the gray, low-res maps of the past. If you'd like to explore some of these places and maps that I'll be talking about, during the registration for the game you can use the code TANKMANIA to get 7 days of premium account for free, 250,000 credits, a premium tank, the Excelsior, and 3 rental tanks for 10 battles each, a Tiger, Cromwell, and T-34-85. Anyway, let's take a look at some of the game's locations. But first, let's play a game. Let's play a game within this video in the world of World of Tanks. Anyway, I'm going to show you a section of a map, and you're going to guess, is it supposed to be in Europe or America? Alright, let's go over these. Maps 1 and 5 are actually the same map, but just different parts. This map is called Live Oaks, and it's a take on a small American town near some southern swamps. Part of the map is filled with an older American mixed-use brick buildings in a downtown, and also a small section of large single-family houses in the shape of a pre-war development. Part of the aspects that give it away as an American map are the wide streets and the grid-like pattern of the town. Even though most World of Tanks maps are based in the 40s and 50s, things like single-family housing developments were still moderately popular in the beginning of the century in the United States. This is in stark contrast to Map 3, which is a take on a town based in Switzerland, but ironically the map has a very American-sounding name of Lakeville. Lakeville has a dense downtown with a radial street pattern, with a few farmhouses scattered outside of the downtown. European cities often have narrow streets with no building setbacks, meaning that there's no front yards or space between the sidewalks and the front of the buildings. This is why a lot of European cities are known to be extremely walkable, because the lack of yards means that there's a very short distance between housing and businesses. And these benefits are for everyone, including preserving the land around the city for everyone to enjoy. Not just those that can afford a big yard, because when everyone has a yard, no one does. Because suburban housing eats away at the real nature that's surrounding the town. But let's move on. Map 3 is a take on an American city, and it's comically proportioned to fit into one corner of the map. This map is known as Highway, and the city partially starts at the density of 2 to 3 story buildings and then goes up to skyscrapers in the center. Truly the perfect American city. No suburbs, haha. Highway shows off a lot of the issues present with American cities, even if this is just a representation of one from the 1950s. To start off with, there's a surface level parking lot right in the center of the downtown, a great example of poor land use that's commonly found in North American cities. Funny enough though, there is actually a train station and a cool EMDE unit with a streamliner sitting in the downtown yard. The grade crossings in-game are also constructed better than most American cities I've seen too. And the next map I have to show off is Widepark. Widepark is an industrial European city with a large park in the center and also a grade-separated rail line cutting the city in half. But before we show off the city, we have a comparison to make. Lately, I've been seeing articles that American pickup trucks have gotten so large that they're the size of a Sherman tank. Well, luckily to test this claim, Wargaming has modeled the latest generation of Chevy Silverado in-game, and here they are pulling up next to the Sherman now. Anyway, Widepark adds to what we were talking about earlier. If you have dense multi-story housing in all of your neighborhoods, you can save land from yards to use for a park. And as the name of the map implies, there is a large park in the center of the city for the residents to enjoy. Or at least when they're not in the middle of a war with a bunch of tanks, of course. Since this is the first episode of this series of urban planning and video games that aren't necessarily about urban planning, we have to talk about one topic that will continue to return again and again as they continue this series. Very few games and developers have modern American suburbs modeled in their maps or just in their stories in general. One of the reasons for this is because designing and modeling a Levittown style setting is tough to do with the never-ending single-family housing and no map limit. But the key reason why it's rare to be a setting in a modern video game is because the suburbs are inherently boring, and video games are all about escapism. Why would I want to play a game that models one of the most boring and worst places to exist in the world, especially if it's super repetitive and monotonous? Maybe we should take a lesson from video game developers when building our cities and towns. They should be interesting, fun, and walkable places that we want to exist in. Why would I need a video game for escapism when I can just go for a walk through the city that I love? Urban planning and the design of your neighborhood is a facet of life that affects so much about how we think and interact with the world, and it's a shame that so many places are designed so poorly for the residents that live in them. When you're playing a game like World of Tanks or any game that makes an effort trying to replicate real-world places and buildings, take a time to look at the maps that exist in these fantasy worlds and try to understand all of the planning and research that goes into them. Video game developers have to become multifaceted individuals to make their games look and play well, so oftentimes they happen to become a part-time planner to make their maps and settings fleshed out. Thanks again to Wargaming for sponsoring this video. Go check out World of Tanks if you have the time. I also suggest loading into training rooms with friends if you want to check out the maps without going into a battle. Also thanks to my Patreons for keeping me financially sane. Another video on a very different topic will be up very soon. See y'all in the next one.